Governor Kathy Hochul met with President Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, today. It comes after a recent meeting with Trump at the White House, where she expressed concerns over immigration enforcement in New York. Members of Congress are calling for new restrictions on online betting platforms known as prediction markets. This includes a ban on bets involving upcoming government activity after a surge of unusual betting in the hours before the first missile strikes in Iran. Meanwhile, in the city, Mayor Zohran Mamdani was in the Bronx today to introduce new rules that aim to cut down on the number of long-standing sidewalk sheds and scaffolding across the city, including at public housing complexes. And the publication Vital City released a new report that analyzes the level of crime in the city. I will discuss the findings with Vital City's founder, Elizabeth Glazer. For the best news, debate, and analysis of New York politics, join us inside City Hall. Good evening and welcome to Inside City Hall for Friday, March 6, 2026. I'm Bobby Kuza. Governor Kathy Hochul met with border czar Tom Homan in Albany this morning. The meeting came one day after the firing of Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and amid fury over the recent death of a blind, disabled refugee in Buffalo after he was released from Border Patrol custody and reported missing by his family. Upstate political reporter Jack Arpey joins me now live from the state capitol with tonight's top story. Good evening, Jack.
Hey, Bobby. Yeah, just to set the scene a little bit, this morning a lot of us reporters were waiting outside the governor's office trying to catch a glimpse of this meeting, which was not announced to the public, when some of the governor's staff came out and said that she was going to make a few remarks and take a few questions. And in that meeting, she told us that, yeah, she basically expressed some of these concerns to the president and some of his staff when she was in Washington for the National Governors Association meeting just a few weeks ago. And he suggested that she get in touch with Homan. She gave him a call, and he apparently suggested that the best thing for him to do would be to come to New York and have this meeting face-to-face. That we talked to the governor. He also talked to some Assembly Republicans as well. And let's take a look at some of what was discussed with the governor earlier today.
He said unless Kathy asked.
In a meeting Friday with border czar Tom Homan at the state capitol, Governor Kathy Hochul drove home his boss's word. The president told her last month that a Minneapolis-like immigration enforcement surge would only come at her request.
That request will never occur. So I reiterated that to him just as a reminder that that is the state of affairs as a directive from the president.
Asked if Homan agreed.
I felt he did.
While Homan did not take questions from reporters, Hochul held a news conference in which she relayed a list of concerns she discussed with the border czar relating to immigration enforcement in New York.
We do not want to see any large-scale detention centers or expansions of detention centers here in the state of New York.
But Hochul also stressed to Homan that while she would like to see improved pathways to citizenship and reformed work visa programs,
I do not support open borders, and we want to make sure that our borders are safe and secure. I do not support having individuals who've committed violent crimes remain in our state. They should be deported.
Sources say Homan also met with State Assembly Minority Leader Ed Roth and Assembly Republicans Thursday afternoon. Lawmakers have been tight-lipped about that meeting and declined to discuss it on camera. The meeting with Hochul came amid the firing of Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, of whom the governor has been harshly critical, in an overall effort to reset relations with blue states. State Director of Operations Jackie Bray indicated that Homan did not dispute the governor's anger over the death of Nuril Amin Shah Alam, a blind disabled refugee who was found dead in Buffalo after being released from Border Patrol custody last month.
The governor and Tom Homan agreed that what they are both interested in is in public safety, and certainly what we saw in Buffalo was not an act of public safety. I think there was agreement on that.
And the governor said she also requested visas for some of his family members, and that was a request that his widow made directly to the governor. And Homan said that was something that he reportedly would look into. Bobby?
So, Jack, I'm thinking back to the last time that Tom Homan was at the state capitol and there were protesters. I seem to remember then state assemblyman Zohran Mamdani sort of yelling and being restrained by officers. What was it like today? Were there protesters around?
Well, yeah, having been someone who was kind of in the middle of that situation, it was a night and day difference to today. First of all, it was a non-session day, so lawmakers weren't here. But this was also not a publicly announced meeting. It was completely under wraps. And it was one of those situations where a lot of us who know the building well were going around to places where VIPs typically enter to see if we could catch a glimpse. We ultimately did not actually end up seeing Tom Homan himself. All of this came from the governor. So it was a completely different situation. And even yesterday when he met with Assembly Republicans, last time they were the ones who announced the press conference, which led to all of that, and even that meeting was completely under wraps.
And also, right now, the governor and the legislative leaders are talking about a package of immigration legislation that would really restrict the way that local law enforcement cooperates with ICE, which is obviously something that I'm sure would not be looked upon kindly by the Trump administration, but we don't know whether that came up in the meeting today.
It doesn't sound like it was a big topic of conversation, but what we do know is that when lawmakers return to Albany on Monday, it certainly is going to be a big topic of conversation because the governor and legislative leaders have continued to say that they want to get this package done before the rest of the budget is passed, with that deadline being April 1st. And if that's going to happen, then those conversations are going to have to really pick up in the coming days.
All right, Jack Arpey in the State House, thank you so much for bringing us that report. And right now, I'm going to bring in our State House reporter, Bernadette Hogan, who joins me now for some more analysis on this. So, Bernadette, talk a little bit about, what's been going on here as far as the relationship between Hochul and President Trump, because they have gotten along, and it seems like between Hochul and Mayor Mamdani, they have managed to sort of stave off any huge influx of immigration enforcement in New York.
Right, and the governor has been prepping not just the state but also the city in case that happens. However, over the last 6 months, she's been able to report back every single time she either talks to Trump on the phone or does have that Oval Office meeting with the president. She's able to report back, listen, I told him that we have no need for a surge of federal officers in New York to specifically handle law enforcement concerns. And she reported that as our colleague upstate played a bite of the governor saying, the president told Governor Hochul, unless Kathy asks. So the governor is kind of flexing that good relationship. And Mayor Zohran Mamdani has also been able to wade into those waters as well, right? He's had 2 meetings thus far in Washington, D.C., and he used his time just last week with the president to advocate on behalf of several students that have either been detained or have immigration charges filed against them, one of them being Mahmoud Khalil, who really rose to prominence specifically with the protests on college campuses on Columbia. And when Mamdani was in Washington, D.C., he advocated on behalf of one particular student who was detained. And President Trump later that day announced that she was released from custody. And actually, Bobby, we do have brand new video, body camera footage that was released from the NYPD earlier today, showing when NYPD officers arrived at Columbia University during this whole interaction, right, with this student. They only show, let me just couch, they only show once the officers show up and are interacting with the Department of Homeland Security officers, they ask them for their identification, and they walk into this apartment. The student is not depicted, but basically the officers confirm that the 3 DHS officers are actually credentialed, are who they say they are, and then the NYPD officers walk out. But what remains to be seen, we don't have details on what happened in between the time when the DHS officers entered the building that is leased by Columbia, I believe. It houses Columbia students. We don't know what happened in between that time because there's allegations that these DHS officers misrepresented themselves and their mission and who they were. The NYPD released that footage. Now there are calls for Columbia to release their own security footage to put forward the missing pieces. But anyway, going back to Governor Hochul meeting with border czar Tom Homan, she also said that she advocated for the release of at least 4 students that were either detained, they're high school students or college students, but she did not release their names. And when I pressed her office about this, because of course Mamdani released the names of those that he wanted President Trump to advocate on behalf of, the governor's office said they're concerned about the safety of these individuals, but she did bring that up in the meeting with Homan.
I mean, bottom line, we didn't really hear much from the governor about what Tom Homan said, right?
No.
And whether there was any reassurances that there will not be any stepped up enforcement here.
Yeah, the only thing where she said she had confirmation of was that President Trump is listening to her, but not necessarily to the suggestions she gave to Tom Homan. She advocated for additional work permits for those that want to be here legally. But, you know, the governor's office and her team, they've been doing this lately where they'll have a private meeting and they'll say, well, I don't want to speak on behalf of the other person. But then for the public to ask questions and reporters to ask questions, well, was your advocacy received successfully or not? Because there's going to be follow-ups as to whether or not her pleas were successful and are successful. Again, going back to the Mamdani-Trump meeting, he saw the fruits of his pleas, at least with that one student, almost immediately because she was released from detention.
Right. All right, we're going to leave it there. Bernadette Hogan, thank you so much for that analysis. It is time now for a break. Coming up, Mayor Mamdani today introduced new rules that aim to cut down on the number of long-term sidewalk sheds and scaffolding across the city, including at the city's public housing complexes. We will bring you the details next. Stay with us.
Every day tells a new story. At Mornings on One, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories that matter most to start your day. With in-depth coverage of the day's news.
I'm Pat Kernan. Here are the stories we're following.
And weather updates every 10 minutes.
Tomorrow, some morning sunshine possible. Clouds take over.
It's our responsibility to get you the information you need before you head out the door. Mornings on One. Weekdays starting at 6 on the Spectrum News app. Free for Spectrum and Xfinity customers.
The storm came through with 120-mile-an-hour winds through our neighborhood. My daughter had to evacuate to our house while we were out of town. Sure enough, power goes out. When the generator kicked back on, it, of course, powered the Spectrum modem. She didn't lose service, and we didn't lose connectivity with her through the entire storm. We both breathed a sigh of relief. To have her feel safe and us feel reassured that she was okay was priceless.
Real customers, real reliability. To get the most reliable internet, visit spectrum.com/stay connected.
I'm Sandra, this is Jorge, and we were adopted in 2019. I remember when they first came to us, Michael was already a teenager. The whole cliche of they're so lucky to have you guys, and it's the other way around. They have changed our family for the better. They chose to love us. They didn't have to. They chose us. Family.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org.
Going into the 2026 election, local races will determine national policy, from the economy to public safety. From the governor's race to the balance of power in Washington, this year's ballot has no shortage of important choices. Let Spectrum News New York One be your resource for balanced, up-to-date coverage and analysis, so you can know what the issues are and how they impact your community. Always dedicated, always local, always on. Decision 2026 on Spectrum News New York One.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Mayor Zohran Mamdani was in the Bronx this morning to introduce new rules to cut down on the number of sidewalk sheds and scaffolding across the 5 boroughs, including at public housing developments. Our Kelly Mena was there with him today, and she joins me now with the latest on that story. Good evening, Kelly.
Good evening, Bobby. And those sidewalk sheds have become a staple of the city's landscape, but have become a target of Mayor Mamdani's administration, and he has plans for taking them down.
An open walkway, a sunlit street, a fixed facade. These are the small changes that make a meaningful difference in people's lives.
Mayor Zohran Mamdani is hoping to become the mayor that finally sheds light back onto the city's sidewalks. Mamdani announced that the pesky green sheds covering miles of sidewalk have become his latest target. Under the new rules, scaffolding will only be allowed to be 40 feet from a building, and buildings that are less than 40 years old and deemed in good condition will be able to move facade inspections from every 5 years to every 12 years.
These rule changes, alongside others, are the ones that are ensuring that sunlight does not become a rarity in this city, but is it in fact something that New Yorkers can come to expect.
The rules don't take effect until this August.
But when you're forced to use straight terracotta, that could delay the project just for one stone. And that shed being up, right, because you need a shed up to hoist a very large stone, could be anywhere from 6 to 12 months waiting for that stone.
Michael Wolf is the founder of Co-ops and Condos of New York. He said building owners are forced to keep up sheds for long periods of time, depending on the work that needs to be done and the specifics of their repair. Wolf said the new rules, especially on inspections, should be taken on a case-by-case basis. 12 years only applies to newer buildings.
It really depends on the condition of the building, the exposure of the building, the height of the building, the material of the building. Some of them can't go that long. If we have a couple more winters like we had this year, with tremendous freeze cycles, thaw cycles, driving rain, the weather patterns are changing. You know, at the end of the day, public safety should be number one.
Mondani is hoping to succeed where others have failed. Mayor Bill de Blasio focused on sheds at public housing.
Sometimes they linger after that purpose or things drag on that should be done quickly.
While Mayor Adams launched a Get Sheds Down initiative that led to some changes and deadlines for repairs.
Great city, beautiful city. We need to see it in a very clear way.
The new rules were announced at the Highbridge Gardens houses in the Bronx on Friday, as the NYCHA development has had 1,800 feet of sheds in place for 5 years. The development will be getting over $14 million in state funding for facade repairs.
People could stand in a corner and attack you. It's very dangerous.
It's kind of, they spooky. You know what I'm saying? And then you see they have the lights. Sometimes people bust the lights out and you can't see. So that was the safety concern.
And the mayor said earlier today that sidewalk sheds that are at the Highbridge Gardens houses, there's about 1,400 feet left, and they're hoping to get it done and down in the next couple of days, Bobby.
So, I mean, we've seen, as you showed, every mayor, as long as I can remember, has had some event, some announcement, how they're going to finally end the scourge of sidewalk sheds. I mean, is it that the policies in the past didn't work? Is it that Mondani is trying something totally different this time? What makes us think that this might actually work this time?
Well, I think it's a little bit of everything, Bobby. So the thing about the past is there's sidewalk sheds everywhere, and in particular on city property and at these developments, but it can be difficult to try to bring them down because the whole point is safety. And when it comes to safety, when is the appropriate time, and when is the work and the repair done enough so that you can remove the sheds and make sure that people are walking without the fear of a piece of brick or a piece of facade falling down. And that becomes then the issue. And in speaking to the head of that co-op and condo board, he said that even the landlords, the building owners, don't want to have them up as long, but they want to make sure that the facade is safe, the building is safe, and people walking on the streets are safe. And so they rather have them up longer, knowing that people will walk safely, than having them up a shorter period of time and something could fall. And then there's the question of, you know, how punitive it is, right, when you're imposing penalties on building owners and landlords for not having the shedding up or for having it up too long. But I mean, I think the administration wants to make this something where they're achieving compliance rather than actually just fining people. Right, and we didn't get those new enforcement kind of tactics. We didn't get the new penalties outlined or detailed earlier today, but I think that's going to be part of their plan as well. They said that they've increased the Department of Buildings budget so that they can bring more staffers in. These inspections can happen much more quickly, efficiently, and that they're happening at a rate that doesn't make the scaffolding stay up as long. Also speaking to the co-op and condos head, he mentioned that there's a lot of red tape when it comes to the bureaucracy of making sure that everything gets filed on time, all the repairs are done, and so that's leading to a lot of this delays, I guess you could call it. All right, Kelly Mena, thank you so much for that report. And in other news, Bronx Borough President Vanessa Gibson put this year's annual celebration of all things Bronx on hold. She says economic uncertainty and budget constraints caused the decision. New York One's Nia Clark has that story from the concourse section of the Bronx.
I am, not naive enough to realize that the city is in the midst of a fiscal crisis and a budget deficit right now that we have to work with and we are a part of as a borough president.
Bronx Borough President Vanessa Gibson decided to pause this year's Bronx Week so her office could shift its focus to deal with the budget deficit and the looming fiscal challenges facing the city.
Think about all of that and also how it looks to the public. I want to focus on what the needs are of the borough, which we are doing right now when it comes to social services, housing, Section 8 vouchers, like all of the things that we know Bronxites are in need of today.
In recent years, Bronx Week has been a nearly month-long series of events celebrating the borough, people, and cultures of the Bronx. Each year, the Bronx Economic Development Corporation and the Bronx Tourism Council spotlight Bronx restaurants and other small businesses, cultural institutions, and parks.
You can't ignore the historical significance of having this event for over 50 years at this point.
Among those asking the borough president to reconsider suspending Bronx Week, Bronx-based 3rd Avenue Business Improvement District Executive Director Pedro Suarez.
I mean, I think it really is about a coordinated strategy with business improvement districts and other economic development leaders and bringing small businesses to the table around the planning of these events. The Bronx has often been told that message of, you know, if you want this, you need to give up this. And I think that we have to fight that. We have to collectively fight that kind of thinking because it is difficult.
City Council member Justin Sanchez echoes those sentiments in a statement saying the Bronx has always turned setbacks into comebacks, and this will be no different. Let's come together and make it happen. Gibson says, though this pause is temporary, she intends to make tourism a larger component of Bronx Week in the future while increasing participation.
And Bronx Week has been phenomenal. I just want it to be even better. I want all Bronxites to be able to be a part of it.
The borough president's office says they're launching a survey to get community feedback on how best to improve Bronx Week and make sure that all who want to participate can. Reporting from the Bronx, Nia Clark, New York 1.
It is time now for a break. Coming up, some members of Congress are calling for new restrictions on online betting platforms known as prediction markets. We will bring you the details on that next. Stay with us.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
There's nothing quite like the feeling of going to the theater. Onstage celebrates that excitement every week by taking you behind the scenes with the latest news and in-depth interviews of the hottest shows on and off Broadway. So grab a seat, because this is a show you won't want to miss. Join us every Saturday and Sunday at 7:30 p.m. for Onstage.
Onstage is presented by your Tri-State Cadillac dealers. Discover which Cadillac is right for you and elevate your journey.
I had a heart attack about 1.5 years ago, and so now I have an ICD implant that needs stable and reliable internet to give routine checks and daily reports to my cardiologist. When my cardiologist told me he wasn't getting the information he needed, me and my fiance looked into better internet providers, and we found Spectrum. As soon as we switched, he said he saw every daily report, every routine check that they did. That made us feel like we were back in control of my life.
Real customers, real reliability. To get the most reliable internet, visit Spectrum.com.
Mom was always organized, but she started forgetting to pay her bills on time. And she'd buy the same gifts over and over.
Telling the girls about my Alzheimer's diagnosis was really hard.
At first, we had our cries, but then we were like, okay, let's make a plan. Early detection gave us time to adapt together.
It's so important for you to think about what you can do and making the most of what you have.
If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
From my time growing up in Queens watching New York 1 to my time reporting here, I've seen how quickly a story can change. At News All Day, we bring you the news as it's happening, from around the boroughs to local government to your neighborhood. Because our city never stops moving.
Hi, I'm Shannon Ferry with the day's developing stories. But first,
stay up to date and informed with News All Day, weekdays from noon to 4.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Online betting platforms known as prediction markets are facing new scrutiny following the attacks on Iran. A surge of unusual betting activity on these platforms in the hours before the first missile strikes suggests some people who knew the attacks were coming may have tried to profit from their inside information. Members of Congress are now calling for new restrictions on prediction markets, including a ban on bets involving future government activity. Spectrum News reporter Cassie Semyon in Washington has the story.
Gambling is more popular than ever. You can bet on card games like blackjack and poker, on horse races, and increasingly on sporting events. And now a new form of gambling, prediction markets.
The prediction market is simply a place where you can try to forecast the future.
Prediction markets are online platforms that take bets on all sorts of events, from elections to basketball games to the government's monthly economic reports. The markets also allow gambling on life or death situations such as war. One prediction market, Polymarket, saw a surge of unusual activity last week in the 24 hours before the U.S. and Israel attacked Iran. More than 150 accounts placed hundreds of bets of at least $1,000, correctly predicting a U.S. strike on Iran by Saturday. Democratic Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut said such activity is inappropriate and allows people to cash in on inside or even classified information. Murphy wrote on social media, "It's insane this is legal. People around Trump are profiting off war and death. I'm introducing legislation ASAP to ban this." Asked to respond, the White House said the only special interest guiding the Trump administration's decision-making is the best interest of the American people. The White House also noted that non-public government information already cannot be used for personal gain. There also was a surge of unusual activity on Polymarket just before the surprise U.S. raid on Venezuela that led to the arrest of its president, Nicolas Maduro. Coleman Strumpf of Wake Forest University says if insiders are making large bets on military action, it also raises other concerns.
If this is a topic such as invasion, like international events, like an invasion of a country, and these markets give some early warning about something happening that could be detrimental to say military action, that's something that's of national security concern.
Spectrum News reached out to Polymarket for comment but did not receive a response. Proponents of prediction markets say such controversy can obscure the benefits these platforms provide. They say these markets are a form of crowdsourcing that can generate more accurate forecasts of future events than more traditional methods.
The information that they provide can be very useful to citizens, policymakers.
The prediction markets have made some changes. Polymarket just ended betting on whether a nuclear weapon would detonate somewhere in the world. Users had placed the chances of that happening this year at 24%. In Washington, Cassie Simeon, Spectrum News.
It is time now for a break. Coming up, I will be joined by the founder of the publication Vital City, Elizabeth Glazer, to talk about a new report on crime in the city. Stay with us. We are back in a minute.
My time at New York One has shown me that in the city that never sleeps, the news never stops. So as the day winds down, turn to the rush hour.
Good afternoon, I'm Monica Burke.
To catch up on the stories that matter across the 5 boroughs, with in-depth interviews from the city's newsmakers, plus the latest forecast. Catching you up with today, preparing you for tomorrow. Right here on the Rush Hour. Weekdays from 4 to 7 p.m.
The Nanakuli Valley is the largest Hawaiian community in the state of Hawaii. Because of Spectrum and their investment, Alulike is a place that people can come and access technology. Many of our participants don't have computers at home. We have programs that help students, that help adults get employment. Spectrum gives us the tools to help more people get there.
I'm Chris Jakimick. I served in the United States Air Force and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is my job is people, everyone is my business. But unfortunately in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jakimick, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. My service never stops.
At Spectrum Noticias, we recognize that our New York City community is vibrant and diverse.
Spectrum Noticias delivers balanced coverage of the stories that matter in our communities and across the country.
Our journalists are based in the neighborhoods we cover, ensuring you get in-depth reporting on what's happening in the places we call home.
So join us at Spectrum Noticias. We're always on, always there for you.
Now available on your TV. Check your local listings. Also available on the Spectrum News app.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Vital City, the urban policy think tank, recently came out with a report titled The State of Crime in New York City, 2025 and Beyond. It found that despite historic lows in the number of murders and shootings here in the city, the picture is not entirely rosy, with overall major crimes still 27% higher than pre-pandemic levels. Joining me now to talk about it is Elizabeth Glazer. She is the founder of Vital City and previously served as the director of the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice under Mayor Bill de Blasio. Welcome back to the program. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Bobby.
So, earlier this week, the NYPD put out its monthly crime statistics, and it said for the first 2 months of the year, for January and February, it recorded the fewest murders, fewest shootings, and fewest shooting victims in recorded history. So you see these numbers, and you might think New York City is as safe as it's ever been, but I suspect you're going to tell me it's a little bit more complicated than that.
So that is great news about the murders and shootings. The city is doing a very good job there, but that's not the whole picture. And you want to see how things are going to unfold over the year, right? When the weather is cold, crime usually goes down. And so that's what we really do, is to try and figure out what's behind the headlines. And what we found is that while we're doing very well on murders and shootings, when you look at the other 7 major crimes, which is how the city largely measures itself, so it's murder, robbery, rape, and then a bunch of property crimes, that, as you said, we're almost 30% above where we were pre-pandemic. And so we have a while to go. And when you dig a little bit deeper, there's sort of this persistent drumbeat of concern. So what is it that's driving the violent crime? One thing that's driving it is assaults. And the reason why we're looking at all of this is that there's good news, and yet largely New Yorkers are feeling a little jittery and uneasy. So why is that? Right. And so I think there are really kind of 2 reasons that we're seeing. One is that assaults, which are the push and the pull, in the subway station, the punch, those are up, and they've been on an upward march for years. They're up 44% above where they were pre-pandemic.
So Liz, let me ask you, because when we talk about felony assault, that's distinct from a robbery, right? Where somebody assaults you and they take your money, take your wallet. So what are we talking about when we're talking about this category of felony assault? Are these altercations that are happening? Are these, strangers on the street?
Yeah, it can be anything from a bar fight, which is really usually misdemeanor assault, to somebody gets pushed under a train and seriously injured, which is a felony. And so these are the kinds of things that make New Yorkers uneasy when they're walking down the street or they're taking the subway. And so you want to take it really seriously. If that's going up and has been for a long time, even if murders and shootings are going down. And the other thing, just to sort of understand, is, murders and shootings are pretty concentrated. And there aren't, luckily, that many, even though they're so serious, right? They're measured in the hundreds. These other kinds of crimes are measured in the tens of thousands, and they're geographically much more dispersed. And so in addition to kind of assaults, which are a big major crime, we also looked at all crimes, meaning not just the 7 majors, but harassment, misdemeanor assault, the other things that affect your daily life. And what we found there is that those are the highest they've been in 20 years. again, what does that mean about the quality of life, about what people are feeling on the street? And so fantastic news about murders and shootings. Need to pay attention to some of these other things too.
I should put in a plug. You guys put out a new tool this week on the Vital City website. It's called the Data Explorer. So anybody who's interested in this stuff, you can go in and search crime statistics going back to 1993 by borough, by precinct, by crime category, and there's a demographic overlay. It's really, really useful stuff. And I've heard you talk about the fact that you can go back 30 years and the most serious crime is still concentrated in the same neighborhoods now that it was then.
Yeah, so people would love it if people would go to use Data Explorer themselves, put in your own neighborhood, see how it compares to previously or other places. It's a really cool thing. But yeah, address matters. And when you look at something like shootings, there are things that endure, and neighborhood is one. The top 10 precincts that led the city in shootings in the 1990s, when this was a huge issue, are largely the same precincts today, even though the number has shrunk so much. And so, there are some things that endure, there are some things that change. Place endures, volume changes, and the types of crimes that are more frequent change as well.
Let me ask you about Mayor Mamdani's approach to public safety. I know you wrote a piece about this. But in public safety or police reform, for that matter, was not really a central part of his campaign. He retained Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch, even though she really has some different views on policing than he does. And it seems like he's been somewhat hands-off when it comes to the NYPD, at least these first couple of months in office. Is that sort of your read as well?
It does feel like as far as his actions go, that he's relying a lot on the police to be the bulwark of public safety. But I think what he said in the campaign, and I think what is yet to unroll, is what seems to be his vision of what public safety should look like, which is police, an important part, of course, but there are all kinds of other pieces that are civilian that are very, very important to maintaining crime lows in the city.
And there's also this question of the Department of Public Safety, right, that he wants to create that would respond to certain types of mental health emergency calls rather than just a police response. I mean, we don't really seem to know yet how that's going to work or how that's going to play out.
Right. On the one hand, this is becoming more and more usual across the country, that in response to mental health calls, various jurisdictions have civilians, clinicians respond to it. And we do here in New York as well, although not on such a large scale. There's devil in the details, meaning, when the call comes in, how do you know whether to send police or just civilians? If somebody is waving a machete, it's clear, but if they're not, how do you know how the situation will unfold? So, a lot of questions still to answer and how it will be organized.
I only have about 30 seconds left, and I know you can't cover this question in that much time, but I want to know how much you can credit the NYPD or the police commissioner for what has been the drop in murders and shootings. Is this part of a national trend? Are these factors outside of the police department's control, or is it some sort of precision policing that's happening here in New York?
So I think PD has done a very, very good job, and they have traditionally been very, very good on murders, shootings, gun violence generally. We do see that it is a national trend as well. So surely they've had an effect, but unlike past decades where New York City has led the nation, we're now middle of the pack.
All right, we are going to leave it there. Elizabeth Glazer of Vital City. Again, you can go to their website, check out that Data Explorer for anybody who's interested in NYPD crime statistics. Thank you again for joining us tonight.
Thanks a lot, Bobby. Appreciate it.
All right, coming up, I'm going to talk about this week's top political stories and much more with two top journalists in my weekly Friday Reporters Roundtable. Stay with us.
After 30 years of forecasting for New York, I've learned it takes a dedicated team to cover all the weather our city has to offer. As chief meteorologist at New York One, I'm honored to be able to help New Yorkers plan their day.
Morning, noon, or night, our team is here to bring you accurate forecasts you can count on, from severe weather updates to our Weather on the Ones. Watch the New York One weather experts with your Weather on the Ones on your TV and on the go with the Spectrum News app.
I moved from Dallas to Los Angeles all by myself. The order of things I wanted to set up was internet, water, then power. I needed to take a shower, but I really did need the internet for work and to watch my shows. That's kind of a crazy thing to admit in front of a camera. Pretend I didn't say that. I got to Spectrum. I was so relieved that I was getting the best bang for my buck. It was a huge weight taken off of my shoulders.
Real customers, real savings. To see how much you can save, visit spectrum.com/save.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. 2 milligrams of fentanyl can be lethal. A lethal dose is in here. Who gets it, I won't know.
It's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
The sad reality is fentanyl is being mixed into everything now.
More kitchen now.
My father was a New York City firefighter. My mission, like his, is to serve New Yorkers in a city that doesn't stop when the sun goes down. Being with New York One since the beginning, I'm now honored to join you even earlier each weeknight. Starting at 8 with New York Tonight, we'll explore the latest news developments, followed by New York One at 10 to wrap up your day. So join me each weeknight starting at 8 right here on New York One.
Bombing cities, killing civilians, opening up a new theater of war. Americans do not want this.
We didn't start this war, but under President Trump, we are finishing it.
They have no Navy, it's been knocked out. They have no Air Force, it's been knocked out.
Is this going to return to a time of the endless wars that Americans are so tired of?
When I see these chicken hawks sitting here in D.C. who've never been on the receiving end of an order to go to war, which I've done twice, it pisses me off.
I do not recall ever encountering Mr. Epstein.
I did take those plane trips with him.
We have quite some time left in the budget process. I'm encouraged by the conversations we're having.
We're going to get to the right resolution, and just be assured that I take nothing personal in this business.
This was an unfair, meritless attempt by the Democrats to try to tilt the scale, change the rules.
As much as we want to hear the voices of NYCHA residents, the time for diagnosing the problem is kind of over.
Depends on this game that we have to unfortunately play with the federal government to make sure that we both protect trans adults, we protect trans youth, and that we protect all the other programs.
Kristi Noem is gone. Good riddance.
It was an important conversation to be had for him to hear directly from me the concerns I have on behalf of New Yorkers as I continue my prime responsibility, which is to keep New Yorkers safe.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. That was a look back at some of the week's top political stories, including Governor Hochul meeting with Tom Homan earlier today in Albany. And joining me now to discuss these stories are two top journalists in our Friday Reporters Roundtable. Deborah Lee Santos is an editor at the Manhattan Times and the Bronx Free Press, and Joe Anuda covers City Hall for Politico New York. Thank you both for coming in tonight. Let's talk about the Mamdani-Hochul relationship, because just in case anybody thought that there was tension about tax hikes and whatever else, they both they appeared together not once but twice this week to talk about universal child care. So, I mean, talk about that. I'll start with you, Joe, about that a little bit. I mean, obviously, there are some mutually beneficial reason why they keep appearing together and talking about child care in particular.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the mayor ran on this, but, Hochul is kind of footing the bill at this point, and I think the governor, she has skin in the game, so that's why they're both appearing all the time. This is a good issue for both of them. It's just interesting to see how far the mayor is willing to sort of push on her, because she does not want to tax the rich, and he keeps saying that she should. But he's not going full tilt. He didn't appear at this rally in Albany, and there are It's just fascinating to me to see they clearly have some strategy where they don't want to anger their base by abandoning this pledge, but they don't want to anger the governor by pushing too hard. And so to me, I sort of see each one of these appearances as like another sort of footfall on this very delicate path they have to walk.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think, for example, to your point that there's probably nothing more popular, both in terms of the narrative and just simply politically, never mind in terms of public policy, than children, right? The idea that quality health care or child care or any kind of real care for children is on the table is a win for everyone. It's why she has chosen very carefully in this very nuanced way to appear with him and to advance this and say that even though, for example, 72 million is what's being footed in this first year and then upwards of 425 in the second year, she's committing, at least, you know, rhetorically, to saying this is just the beginning. You know, worry not, I've got you guys covered going forward. It's a smart move. It also is very similar to how they have managed the conversation writ large. I mean, you've got Mamdani, you know, shooting down to D.C. in a covert operation to get some housing, affordable housing done in Queens, and then you have Governor Hochul also meeting with Tom Homan, you know, up in the Capitol. They seem to be crafting really, really carefully, as you said, paths forward as they manage the conversation both here on the New York City level and the state level, but also writ large.
It's funny because I think back to the beginning of January where for a minute, it seemed like Governor Kathy Hochul provided all this money for universal child care, and like maybe Mamdani was going to drop the whole tax the rich thing because he'd gotten what he wanted, but that isn't what's happened at all. I mean, you've seen, I mean, like you said, he hasn't pushed that hard, but you've seen, you know, the legislative leaders are going to put it in their one-house bills next week. The city council members are pushing for even wider tax hikes than Mamdani is looking for. So there's pressure on the governor, but she seems to have drawn a line in the sand that she's not going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I would be very shocked if she did it at this point. I mean, it's not even about ideology at this point. She said no, and she'll look super weak if she goes back on her word, especially because there's not really anyone pressuring her to do so. This whole thing came about because she was facing a primary from her left, and that person is no longer in the race. There were supposed to be 10,000 people that came to the Capitol to pressure her, Mamdani's coalition, rally, and you know, not that there's no way, not even close to that many people showed up. So I think the pressure is really off her left flank. So caving now just makes kind of no sense at all.
Although it's a really useful way to needle her. I mean, it seems to me that if you look at the appearances just this week and going forward, a lot of the conversation that's being lobbed at her tends to skirt around some of the policy issues that are being advanced even in that particular presser or that moment. It's about, well, this is great. Can you talk about whether you're going to do this, you know, if you're going to essentially follow in Mamdani's lead, if you're going to take, and I think it's an effective way of continuing to raise the issue. It certainly has given a bit of cover to the Senate leadership and to the Assembly leadership and Carl Hastie and Andrew Stewart Cousins to be able to more forcefully say, this is something we're willing to consider. This is new for them. This is not exactly something that they would have advanced nearly. And again, this is Albany, so they're not exactly being that forceful about it. But this is one of the first times you see that this is actually something they're willing to articulate. Affordability, affordability, affordability. That's something that's also different.
Yeah. All right, you guys sit tight for just a minute. We got to take a break. I will have much more with these reporters in 2 minutes. Stay with us.
We have so many ways to stay connected. A single touch can bring us closer to the families we love, the friends we know, and the city we share. And Spectrum helps us keep connected throughout the day, every day. Including more ways to watch New York One as a Spectrum Internet customer. Watch Spectrum News New York One on the Spectrum News app, available on all your favorite devices.
I don't know if the world knows this, but kids are expensive. And when we found out we were pregnant, of course, we were looking for any ways to slash bills.
And making sure we only had what we needed so that everything was less stressful.
And saving money with our internet bill really helped us out a lot. Came to Spectrum because we were with AT&T before, and Spectrum just had better deals.
That money we saved with Spectrum just added to what we could repurpose for our daughter.
Real customers, real savings. To see how much you can save, visit spectrum.com/save.
day tells a new story. At Mornings on One, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories that matter most to start your day with in-depth coverage of the day's news.
I'm Pat Kernan. Here are the stories we're following.
And weather updates every 10 minutes.
Tomorrow, some morning sunshine possible. Clouds take over.
It's our responsibility to get you the information you need before you head out the door. Mornings on One. Weekdays starting at 6 on the Spectrum News app. Free for Spectrum and Xfinity customers.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. I'm once again joined by my Friday Reporters Roundtable, Deborah Lee Santos and Joe Anuda. So let me ask you guys about the meeting today between Governor Hochul and the border czar, Tom Homan. Hochul seems to think that she has this agreement with the president where he's not going to send troops or step up enforcement in New York unless she asks for it. I don't know if Tom Homan is on the same page as Donald Trump, but it's not clear what she walked away from the meeting with, but I guess there's no threat of anything getting worse, at least.
Yeah, to me, Homan seems like more, we've seen him before. He's been in New York. He's negotiated with the Adams administration previously. Yeah. I will be interested to see, what he's going to get out of that. Oh, we're not going to send in these troops, but he wants very specific things. He wanted an ICE facility that was on Rikers Island for the purpose of coordinating with local law enforcement, legally, of course, within the sanctuary city framework, but he wants to be able to have access to people, who commit crimes that are on this list that allow them to then, put them through deportation proceedings. So I'll just be curious if Hochul and the mayor agreed to any of that in exchange for what seems to be this assurance that ICE will sort of stand down in some ways.
Right. Because it's hard to imagine that the mayor or the governor would agree to anything that he's seeking. He had some, he had some agreement on some points with Mayor Adams. But if anything, the state is taking action to restrict cooperation with ICE, which wouldn't, you would think wouldn't sit well with the administration, but we don't really know what's going on.
We've seen this playbook, we've seen this particular move before in this playbook as well, which is to say that the appearance and the optics sometimes are alone enough to, quell the particular policy points and the finer discussions and the details. They don't necessarily have to be hashed out as long as it seems like, Hochul is being amenable to having a civilized sit-down, the grown-up in the room who can sit down with this individual. They have such commonalities. They can talk about the fact that there was an individual, a non-documented older individual who was impaired, who was then, who was found dead on the streets of Buffalo, was it? Upstate. And that she could say that in that meeting, she advanced the interests of that family and said that they each should be granted visas. It's something that they specifically had asked for. Goes to her wanting to build up the credentials of, I can sit down with this gentleman, I can do this conversation. I'm the grown-up. I'm the mom governor, as was said earlier in a press conference this week, but I'm also going to press for the things that the city and the state need.
Let me change gears. I want to talk about Vicky Palladino, city councilwoman, who has a history of saying inflammatory, let's say, and controversial, offensive statements about Muslims and several other classes of people. I think the one that got her into the most recent bout of hot water was when she suggested the need to take seriously the expulsion of Muslims from Western nations, or at the very least, the severe sanction of them within Western borders. At that point, I think this was back in December, there was a proceeding initiated with the City Council's Ethics Committee, and now it looks like they may take some action against her. We don't know what that looks like, if it's going to be, a fine or expulsion or suspension. But what do we know about this, Joe? What do you think?
Well, I think, Vicky is raising the claim that her First Amendment rights are being trampled upon through this committee hearing. And they have a resolution, charging her with disorderly conduct. I don't really think that applies here. You don't have a constitutional right to avoid scrutiny by your colleagues. You and I and Deborah have all covered the past instances of this where Andy King, Coleman Yeager, this comes up from time to time, and I was in court for Andy King. The judge and many others found the council has a right to enforce a code of conduct. You don't have a constitutional protection against that. Now, I think we can't say for sure if we need to know what the punishment's going to be. If they expel her from office, maybe that, is more of a gray area the courts will have to decide. But I think the council and really Julie Menon, who's getting a lot of pressure to act on this, seem to be pretty squarely within their rights to enforce a code of conduct in their own body.
And she's likely not to want to let this go. I mean, she seems to really be sparked of late with the administration's appointments of people of color to lead departments and agencies. And so the likelihood that she's going to say something that seems on its face racist, Islamophobic, against college students who she's named as monsters who need to be slayed. I mean, she's gone toe-to-toe with drag queens. It seems that she's just got the world at her fingertips. In terms
I missed some of those. I was pulling up as you were talking just recently when the mayor named the new head of the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs.
That's right.
Faiza Ali, who was born and raised in Brooklyn, and Vicky Palladino tweeted, "We're under foreign occupation. There's no other way to put it. Does this administration have one single actual American in it?" This is, of course, a born and raised New Yorker. But she's not apologizing for any of this.
No, and by the way, I mean, she's not. And as you said, she's really, really burrowing very deeply onto that First Amendment, into that First Amendment space. And it'll be interesting to see, again, depending on what the city council comes up as what they feel is a proper censure or measure, you know, who will line up beside her, as distasteful as some of this rhetoric might be, to say, look, she is entitled to say terrible things because we want to allow for everyone to say terrible things in equal measure. It'll be interesting to see how far this goes.
Maybe one particular radio host might line up with her, but
precisely.
That's a whole other conversation. All right, guys. Beverly Santos, Joe Anuda, thank you guys both for joining us tonight. And that is going to do it for tonight's show. Stay tuned for another episode of our weekly national political show, The Big Deal, with Errol Lewis at 9 o'clock tonight. Thanks for watching, everybody, and have a great weekend. We will see you the next time on Inside City Hall.
Going into the 2026 election, local races will determine national policy, from the economy to public safety. From the governor's race to the balance of power in Washington, this year's ballot has no shortage of important choices. Let Spectrum News New York One be your resource for balanced, up-to-date coverage and analysis, so you can know what the issues are and how they impact your community. Always dedicated, always local, always on. Decision 2026 on Spectrum News New York One.
This is a very special place. It is a place where we like to think we make memories.
We have the capacity for nearly 20,000 people in the arena.
Working at a building like this, you have access to so many resources. It's about utilizing the tools that we have to be able to create those memories for our partners, for our fans, and for anybody who steps into this building. At the end of the game, they're going to leave here feeling like they enjoyed the experience, enjoyed the game, and that's what we're here for.
A venue like this has a lot of moving parts, but at its heart, it has its technology backbone.
Spectrum powers scoreboards, ticketing, point of sales. They also provide a highly secure network that takes care of fan security, security of the Wi-Fi access, and any data that our fans are sharing while in the arena.
Our fans have an expectation that technology is part of their experience, and Spectrum helps us do that.
There's nothing quite like the feeling of going to the theater. Onstage celebrates that excitement every week by taking you behind the scenes with the latest news and in-depth interviews of the hottest shows on and off Broadway. So grab a seat, because this is